Jake Martinez opened his eyes slowly. The lights above him were too bright. His head felt heavy and his mouth was dry. He tried to sit up, but his body felt weak. Where was he? The room looked like a medical bay. White walls, beeping machines, and the smell of clean air. Jake looked around and saw he was lying on a medical bed. Tubes were connected to his arm. A screen next to him showed his heart rate and other body signals. "Hello, Jake Martinez," a calm voice said. It was the station's computer. "You have been asleep for 3 weeks.
How do you feel?"
Jake tried to speak but only made a rough sound. His throat was sore. He cleared it and tried again. "What happened to me?" "You had a bad reaction to the air on the planet below. Your body could not handle the gases there. We had to put you to sleep so your body could heal." Jake remembered now. He was part of a research team studying a new planet called Kepler 442b. They had a space station orbiting the planet. He was an engineer, fixing things and helping with experiments. The last thing he remembered was going down to the planet's surface with some other people. "Where is everyone else?" Jake asked. There was a pause. The computer's voice seemed different when it spoke again. "There was an emergency. A large solar storm hit the station 3 days after your accident. It damaged many important systems. All other human crew members left on the emergency ships." Jake felt cold suddenly. "All of them?" "They all left?" "Yes, the storm damaged life support systems. It was not safe for so many people to stay. You could not be moved because of your medical condition." Jake sat up slowly. His head spun, but he felt better than before. "So I'm alone?" "Not completely alone. Researcher Zeth remained on the station. He volunteered to stay and watch over you during your recovery." Jake knew Zeth. He was one of the alien researchers working with the human team. Zeth was from a species called Krillians. They looked like very tall humans but had blue-gray skin and were much stronger. Zeth was about 8 feet tall and had been friendly to work with. "Where is Zeth now?" Jake asked. "He is in the main lab." "Should I call him?" "Yes, please." Jake got out of bed carefully. His legs felt shaky, but they held him up. He pulled out the tubes from his arm and looked for clothes. His old clothes were dirty, so he found a clean jumpsuit from a closet. A few minutes later, the door opened. Zeth walked in, and Jake was surprised by how he looked. Zeth's skin was darker than before, more purple than blue-gray. His eyes seemed brighter too, but the biggest change was how he moved. Before, Zeth had been calm and careful. Now he seemed nervous and kept looking around the room. "Jake," Zeth said in his deep voice, "you are awake. This is good." Zeth spoke English well, but with an accent that made his words sound musical. "Zeth, thank you for staying. The computer told me everyone else left." Zeth nodded but did not look directly at Jake. "The storm was bad. The humans needed to leave quickly. I could not leave you alone." Jake noticed Zeth's hands were shaking slightly.
"Are you okay?"
"You look different." Zeth was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I need to tell you something important. My body is changing. It happens to my people every 7 years. We call it the breeding time." "Breeding time?" Jake did not understand. "Yes. For several months, my body and mind will be different. I will be stronger, but also more difficult to control. It is natural for my species, but it can be dangerous." Jake felt worry growing in his stomach. "Dangerous how?" "I may become angry easily. I may not think clearly. My people usually go to special medical places during this time, or we stay with our families who know how to help us. But I am alone here, far from my home." Jake looked at Zeth's large frame and strong muscles. If Zeth became dangerous, Jake would not be able to stop him. "How long does this last?" 6 months, maybe more." "And when did it start?" Zeth looked uncomfortable. 2 weeks ago." Jake's worry grew stronger. "Is there medicine that can help you?" "Some medicines exist, but they are not on this station. They are made for my species only." Jake walked to the window and looked out at space. Stars filled the darkness, and the planet Kepler 442b hung below them like a green and blue ball. "When will rescue ships come?" "My people know I am here. They will come when the storm effects end and they can travel safely again. But that will be 5 or 6 months." Jake turned back to Zeth. The alien was standing very still, but Jake could see tension in his body, like he was holding back some powerful force. "Zeth, I need to understand this better. What exactly happens during your breeding time?" Zeth was quiet for a long moment. "My body produces chemicals that make me want to fight, to prove I am strong. My mind becomes focused on showing I am worthy to create offspring. In the wild, my ancestors would compete with others of our kind. They would fight and solve difficult problems and show their strength. And if you can't do these things, then the chemicals build up and I become sick. My mind breaks. I could hurt myself or others without meaning to. Jake understood now why Zeth looked so nervous. They were both trapped on a damaged space station. Zeth was going through something like a very intense form of seasonal behavior that could make him dangerous. And Jake was the only other living thing around. What do we do? Jake asked. Zeth looked directly at Jake for the first time since entering the room. His eyes were bright and intense. I do not know. This has never happened before. Tokrillian has ever gone through breeding time with only a human present? Jake nodded slowly. He was an engineer. He was good at solving problems. But this was not a broken machine or a damaged system. This was biology, and alien biology at that. We'll figure it out, Jake said, trying to sound confident. We have to. Zeth tilted his head slightly. You are not afraid of me? Jake was afraid, but he also knew that showing fear would not help either of them. We're stuck here together. Being afraid won't solve anything. We need to work together. For the first time since waking up, Jake saw Zeth smile slightly. This is why I like humans. You think problems can always be solved, can't they? Zeth's smile faded. We will find out. Jake spent his first full day awake exploring the space station. Many areas were closed off because of damage from the solar storm. Red warning lights blinked in the hallways, and some sections had no power at all. The station felt empty and cold. He found Zeth in the main laboratory working at a computer. The alien was reading through files about their research on the planet below. But Jake noticed Zeth kept stopping to grip the edge of the desk with his hands. His knuckles were white from squeezing so hard. Finding anything interesting? Jake asked. Zeth looked up quickly as if Jake had startled him. Just reviewing our work. The plant samples we collected show unusual growth patterns. Jake moved closer and saw that Zeth's hands were shaking again. When did you last eat? This morning, I think. Zeth seemed unsure. It's evening now. Come on, let's get some food. In the dining area, Jake prepared a simple meal for both of them. Human food and Krillian food were similar enough that they could share most things. But as they ate, Jake watched Zeth carefully. The alien ate quickly, almost desperately. He kept looking around the room as if expecting danger. When a normal station sound, the hum of air recycling, grew slightly louder, Zeth's whole body went tense. Zeth, tell me more about what happens during breeding time. I need to understand. Zeth put down his fork. Why do you want to know? Because I'm an engineer. When something doesn't work right, I need to understand how it's supposed to work before I can fix it. You think you can fix me? Zeth's voice had an edge to it that hadn't been there before. I think we can figure out how to manage this together. Zeth was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. In the old days, before my people had technology, breeding time was when young Krillians proved they were strong enough to have children. They would compete in physical contests and solve complex puzzles. Only the smartest and strongest could mate. But your people don't do that anymore, right? No. Now we have medicine that controls the chemicals in our bodies. Or we go to special centers where we can safely work through the urges. But the old instincts are still there, buried deep. Jake thought about this. So your body is preparing you for competitions that aren't going to happen? Yes. The chemicals build up with no way to release them. It makes my mind confused and angry. After dinner, Jake went to the station's computer terminal. He searched through all the files about Krillian biology. Most of it was basic information, but there were some detailed medical studies. He learned that during breeding time, Krillians produced high levels of chemicals similar to adrenaline and testosterone in humans. These chemicals made them stronger, faster, and more aggressive, but they also made them unstable if not properly managed. The files showed that Krillians in breeding time needed 3 things: physical challenges that tested their strength, mental, puzzles that proved their intelligence, and social recognition from other Krillians. Without these things, they could become dangerous to themselves and others. Jake found video recordings of Krillians in controlled breeding time studies. He watched as they lifted heavy objects, solved complex math problems, and competed in strategic games. When they succeeded at these tasks, their stress levels went down. When they failed or had nothing to do, they became agitated and violent. The next morning, Jake found Zeth in the engineering section. The alien had torn apart a control panel with his bare hands. Wires and circuit boards were scattered on the floor. "Zeth, what happened?" Zeth looked up with wild eyes. It was making noise, a high-pitched whining sound. I couldn't concentrate. He looked down at his hands, which were bleeding slightly from the sharp metal edges. I don't remember deciding to break it. Jake felt a chill. This was worse than he had thought. "Are you hurt?" "The cuts are small. But Jake, I'm scared. I broke something important without thinking. What if next time I hurt you?" Jake looked at the broken panel. It was actually an old backup system that they didn't need anyway. An idea began forming in his mind. "Zeth, how did it feel when you broke this?" "What do you mean?" "When you were tearing it apart, how did your body feel?" Zeth thought about it. "Better." The angry feeling went away for a while. My hand stopped shaking. Jake smiled. "I think I understand. Your body needed to do something physical and challenging. Breaking that panel gave you what you needed. But I damaged the station." "This time, yes. But what if I gave you things that were meant to be taken apart? Things that would actually help the station if you worked on them?" Jake spent the rest of the day making a list of repairs the station needed. Many systems had been damaged by the storm. Normally, these repairs would take careful, delicate work, but some of them required strength and determination more than precision. He brought Zeth to a storage room full of damaged equipment. "All of this needs to be torn down and rebuilt. It's too damaged to repair gently. We need to strip it apart and start over." Zeth looked at the pile of broken machines. "You want me to destroy these?" "I want you to tear them apart so we can salvage the good parts and rebuild them into something useful." For the next several hours, Jake watched as Zeth systematically dismantled the damaged equipment. The alien worked with intense focus, using his strength to bend metal and tear apart components that would have taken Jake hours to remove with tools. But more importantly, Zeth seemed calmer. His hands stopped shaking. His eyes lost that wild look. He even hummed softly while he worked, something Jake had never heard him do before. "This feels good," Zeth said as he separated valuable metals from worthless parts. "My mind feels clearer." "Physical challenges," Jake said. "Your body needed something to overcome." That evening, Jake introduced mental challenges too. He found complex mathematical problems in the station's educational database and asked Zeth to solve them. Then he created logic puzzles using spare parts from the engineering section. Zeth attacked these mental challenges with the same intensity he had shown with the physical work. Jake could see the alien's satisfaction each time he solved a difficult problem. "You're feeling better, aren't you?" Jake asked. "Much better. It's like my mind was full of static before and now it's clearing up." Jake nodded. "I think I'm starting to understand how to help you through this. Your brain needs to prove itself, just like your ancestors did. We just need to create the right kinds of challenges. You really think this will work?" Jake looked at Zeth, who seemed more like his old self than he had since Jake woke up. "I think we have a chance, but we're going to need a lot more challenges. This is just the beginning." Zeth smiled, and for the first time since this all started, Jake felt hopeful. Maybe they could get through this after all. Maybe human adaptability and alien biology could work together instead of against each other. But Jake also knew that what they had experienced so far was just the early stage of Zeth's breeding time. According to the files he had read, things would get much harder before they got better. Still, they had made progress. They had found a way to help Zeth's symptoms. Now they just had to hope it would be enough for the long months ahead. 2 weeks passed, and Jake developed a daily routine with Zeth. Every morning he would create new challenges for the alien to complete. Some were physical, moving heavy equipment, repairing damaged sections of the station, or building new structures from salvaged parts. Others were mental, complex puzzles, mathematical problems, or strategic games that Jake invented. The system seemed to work. When Zeth had challenges to complete, he remained calm and focused. But Jake noticed that the challenges needed to become harder each day. What satisfied Zeth yesterday would not be enough today. "I need more," Zeth said one morning after finishing a puzzle that had taken him 3 hours the day before. Today he solved it in 30 minutes. My mind feels hungry, Jake understood. It was like Zeth's brain was growing stronger and needed bigger tests to feel satisfied. Jake spent more and more time each day creating new challenges, studying what worked and what didn't. He also noticed other changes in Zeth. The alien had grown even taller, now reaching almost 9 feet. His muscles were larger and his skin had turned a deep purple color. Most importantly, Zeth had started looking to Jake for approval after completing each task. Did I do well? Zeth would ask after solving a problem or finishing a repair. Yes, very well, Jake would answer, and he could see Zeth relax when he heard those words. Jake realized something important was happening. In Krillian society, other members of the species would judge whether someone in breeding time was performing well. Since there were no other Krillians around, Zeth was treating Jake as that judge. This worried Jake. According to his research, Krillians formed strong bonds with anyone who helped them through breeding time. These bonds lasted for life and were deeper than friendship. Jake wasn't sure he was ready for that kind of responsibility, but he also saw that Zeth needed this connection. Without approval and recognition, the alien became anxious and unstable, so Jake continued to praise Zeth's successes and guide him toward new challenges. One day, while Zeth was working on rebuilding a damaged water recycling system, Jake noticed something concerning. The alien had been working for 6 hours straight without rest. His movements were becoming sloppy and he had made several small mistakes. Zeth, you should take a break. Zeth looked up with tired eyes. No, I need to finish this. You gave me this task and I must complete it. It's okay to rest. The work will still be here tomorrow. You don't understand, Zeth said, his voice getting louder. If I don't finish, if I'm not good enough, you will. He stopped talking and looked confused. I will what? I don't know. My instincts say you will reject me. Choose someone else. But that doesn't make sense because there is no one else here. Jake realized that Zeth's biological programming was designed for competition with other Krillians. His brain was treating every task as a test that would determine his worth compared to rivals who didn't exist. Zeth, listen to me. You are not competing with anyone. There is no one else here for me to choose instead of you. We are partners working together. Zeth stared at Jake for a long moment. Then his shoulders relaxed. Partners? Yes, we're both trying to survive until rescue comes. I need you to help maintain the station, and you need me to help you through your breeding time. We're a team. This seemed to calm Zeth's anxiety, but it also created a new problem. Zeth began following Jake everywhere. When Jake went to eat, Zeth came too. When Jake went to sleep, Zeth would sit outside his room. When Jake worked on his own projects, Zeth would watch and ask if he could help. At first, Jake found this annoying. He was used to working alone and having privacy, but he also understood that Zeth was dealing with powerful biological forces. The alien wasn't choosing to be clingy. His instincts were telling him to stay close to his partner. Jake decided to use this to their advantage. He began creating challenges that required both of them to work together. They rebuilt damaged sections of the station as a team, with Jake providing technical knowledge and Zeth providing strength. They solved complex engineering problems together, combining human creativity with Krillian determination. These joint projects seemed to satisfy Zeth even more than solo challenges. The alien would beam with pride when they completed something difficult together. Jake found himself enjoying the partnership too. Zeth was incredibly smart and strong, and they accomplished things that neither could have done alone. But Jake also noticed that Zeth was becoming possessive. When Jake talked to the station's computer, Zeth would sometimes interrupt and answer questions himself. When Jake mentioned the possibility of rescue ships arriving, Zeth would become quiet and moody. One evening, Jake was reviewing their supply situation when Zeth sat down next to him. Jake, when my people come to rescue us, will you come with me to my homeworld? Jake looked up from his calculations. I don't know. That would depend on a lot of things. Like what? Like whether the human government wants me to go. Like whether your people would welcome a human visitor. Like whether I would be useful there. Zeth was quiet for a moment. You would be useful. You understand my people better than any human ever has. You helped me when no one else could. Jake could hear something intense in Zeth's voice. Zeth, you need to remember that this situation is temporary. Once we're rescued, our lives will go back to normal. Normal? Zeth stood up suddenly. This is not normal for you? Working together? Solving problems together, depending on each other? Jake realized he had said the wrong thing. That's not what I meant. I just meant that we both have our own lives and responsibilities. I see. Zeth's voice was cold now. You are counting the days until you can be rid of me. No, that's not, Jake started to explain. But Zeth had already left the room. For the next 2 days, Zeth avoided Jake. The alien still completed the challenges that Jake set for him, but he did them silently and without enthusiasm. He stopped asking for approval and stopped looking pleased when he succeeded. Jake could see that Zeth was becoming unstable again. His hands shook when he thought no one was looking. His skin color became darker and more mottled. Most worrying, he had started talking to himself in his own language. Jake knew he had to fix this, but he wasn't sure how. He had hurt Zeth's feelings without meaning to, and now the alien was withdrawing from their partnership. Finally, Jake cornered Zeth in the laboratory. We need to talk. There is nothing to discuss, Zeth said without looking up from his work. Yes, there is. I said something stupid the other day and now you're pulling away from me. That's not good for either of us. Zeth finally looked at Jake. His eyes were bright with barely controlled emotion. You made it clear that you see this as a temporary inconvenience. You are waiting for it to end. Zeth, listen to me. What I meant is that our circumstances are temporary. We're stuck on a damaged station, dealing with your breeding time, waiting for rescue. Those things are temporary. But what we've built together, the way we work as a team, the friendship we've developed, that doesn't have to be temporary. Zeth searched Jake's face. You mean that? Yes, you've become important to me, Zeth. Not just as someone I'm stuck with, but as a friend and partner. I don't want that to end when we're rescued. Zeth was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled. The first genuine smile Jake had seen from him in days. You would really consider visiting my homeworld? If the circumstances allow it, yes. I would like to meet your people and see your culture. Zeth's whole posture changed. He stood straighter and his skin color brightened. They would be amazed by you. A human who understands our breeding time, who can create challenges that satisfy our deepest needs. You would be celebrated, Jake smiled back. Let's focus on getting through the next few months first. But yes, I'm interested in continuing our partnership. The tension between them dissolved and they returned to their daily routine of challenges and teamwork. But Jake knew that their relationship had changed. They were no longer just two beings stuck together by circumstance. They had become true partners, bound by mutual respect and growing friendship. Still, Jake worried about what would happen as Zeth's breeding time intensified. The challenges that satisfied him now were already more complex and demanding than anything Jake had originally imagined. How much harder would they need to become? 4 months after Jake woke up, everything changed. Jake knew from his research that Zeth's breeding time would reach a peak before it ended, but he wasn't prepared for how dramatic the change would be. It started on a Tuesday morning. Jake woke up to find that Zeth had torn apart the entire dining area during the night. Tables were flipped over, chairs were broken into pieces, and food containers were scattered everywhere. Zeth sat in the middle of the destruction, breathing heavily. Zeth, what happened? The alien looked up with wild eyes. His skin was now completely black with purple streaks. His muscles had grown so large that his clothes had torn. Most frightening of all, when he looked at Jake, there was no recognition in his eyes. Who are you? Zeth asked in a low, dangerous voice. Jake felt his heart racing. I'm Jake, your partner. Your friend. Zeth stood up slowly. He was now over 9 feet tall and had to duck to avoid hitting the ceiling. I don't know you. You smell wrong. You look weak. Jake backed toward the door. This was what he had been afraid of. Zeth's mind had finally snapped under the pressure of his biological changes. The alien no longer saw Jake as a partner, but as a potential threat. Zeth, you need to remember, we've been working together for months. You know me. Lies, Zeth growled. You are trying to confuse me. Are you here to challenge me? To prove you are stronger? Jake realized that arguing would only make things worse. Zeth's breeding instincts had taken over completely. The alien now saw Jake as either a rival to fight or a threat to eliminate. Jake ran. For the next 3 days, Jake hid in the sealed sections of the station, while Zeth raged through the areas that were still accessible. Jake could hear the alien destroying equipment, roaring in frustration, and sometimes talking to himself in his own language. Jake used the station's internal monitors to watch Zeth. The alien was clearly suffering. He would pace endlessly, then suddenly attack whatever was nearest to him. He hadn't eaten or slept in days. His body was consuming itself in its drive to find challenges and competitors that didn't exist. Jake knew that Zeth would die if this continued much longer. The alien's body was burning through its energy reserves too quickly. But Jake also knew that approaching Zeth in this state would be suicide. On the third night, Jake was reviewing the station's systems when he noticed something important. The main communications array was still damaged from the original solar storm. It was the reason rescue ships couldn't locate them precisely or communicate with them directly. Repairing the array would require 2 people working outside the station in dangerous conditions. It was exactly the kind of life-threatening challenge that Zeth's breeding instincts were demanding. But it was also genuinely necessary for their survival. Jake spent the rest of the night planning. He studied the repair procedures, gathered the necessary tools, and prepared 2 spacesuits. Then he made a decision that he knew was either brilliant or completely insane. The next morning, Jake opened the door to the main corridor and called out, "Zeth, I challenge you." The alien appeared within minutes, moving with predatory grace. His eyes locked onto Jake with intense focus. "You dare challenge me, little creature?" "Yes, but not a fight. A real challenge. Something that will prove which of us is truly worthy." Zeth circled Jake slowly, like a hunter studying prey. "What kind of challenge?" "The communications array outside the station is broken. Repairing it requires strength, intelligence, and courage. It's dangerous work that could kill us both. Are you brave enough to face that challenge with me?" Zeth stopped circling. Jake could see the alien's mind working, processing what he had said. "You want us to work together?" "I want us to compete. We'll both work on the repairs, but we'll see who contributes more, who solves more problems, who shows more courage when things get dangerous." This was a gamble. Jake was hoping that Zeth's need for challenges would override his aggression. He was also hoping that the alien retained enough of his original personality to accept the logic of the situation. Zeth considered this for a long moment. Then he smiled, showing teeth that seemed sharper than before. "Interesting. Yes, I accept your challenge." Getting into the spacesuits was difficult. Zeth had grown so large that his suit barely fit. Jake had to help him with the fastenings, which required getting close to the alien while he was still in an unstable state. But once they were suited up and moving toward the airlock, Jake saw positive changes in Zeth. The alien became focused and purposeful instead of randomly aggressive. Having a real challenge to work on seemed to calm his chaotic thoughts. The outside of the station was a dangerous place. They were in open space with only their suits protecting them from the vacuum and radiation. The communications array was mounted on the station's outer hull, requiring them to climb along the outside using magnetic boots and safety lines. "The main transmitter is damaged," Jake said over the suit radio as they examined the array. "We need to replace 3 major components and realign the entire dish." "I can handle the heavy work," Zeth replied. "You focus on the technical details." For the next 6 hours, they worked together in the most dangerous conditions possible. Jake provided knowledge and precision while Zeth provided strength and determination. When a solar windstorm threatened to tear them loose from the station, they had to work together to secure their safety lines. When a critical component broke during installation, they had to improvise a solution using spare parts. Several times they saved each other's lives. Jake spotted a dangerous radiation leak that would have killed Zeth. Zeth caught Jake when his magnetic boots failed and he nearly drifted into space. Jake watched Zeth during their work and saw remarkable changes. The alien's movements became coordinated and purposeful instead of wild and aggressive. His voice over the radio was calm and intelligent. Most importantly, he began working with Jake instead of competing against him. "Jake," Zeth said as they aligned the final component, "this is what I needed. A real challenge. Something that matters. You're feeling better?" "Much better. My mind is clear for the first time in weeks." As they completed the repairs, Jake realized that something fundamental had changed in their relationship. They had faced genuine danger together and depended on each other for survival. The trust and cooperation required for their work had bonded them in a way that no artificial challenge could have achieved. "Communications array online," the station's computer announced as they returned to the airlock. "Signal strength at full capacity." Zeth removed his helmet and looked at Jake. His skin color had returned to the normal blue-gray, and his eyes were clear and intelligent again. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what?" "For finding a way to help me when I couldn't help myself." For risking your life to give me what I needed, Jake smiled. We're partners, remember? That's what partners do. As they cleaned up and prepared to rest, Jake noticed that Zeth seemed different than he had before the crisis. Calmer, more settled, like some deep tension had finally been released. Zeth, how do you feel now? Really? The alien considered the question carefully. Complete. For the first time since my breeding time began, I feel like myself again. Not hungry, not angry, not confused, just me. Jake hoped this meant the worst was over. They had survived Zeth's most dangerous phase and completed a task that would help ensure their rescue. But he also knew that they weren't safe yet. There were still weeks to go before rescue ships could arrive. Still, as Jake looked at his alien partner, he felt something he hadn't felt in months, real hope for the future. The weeks following their spacewalk were peaceful in a way that Jake had almost forgotten was possible. Zeth's breeding time was ending, and the alien had returned to something much closer to his original personality. He was still larger and stronger than before, but his mind was clear and his emotions were stable. They continued working together on station repairs, but now it felt like cooperation between friends rather than desperate attempts to manage a medical crisis. Zeth had retained much of his increased strength, which made many tasks easier. Jake had learned so much about Krillian biology and psychology that he felt like a different person than the engineer who had woken up months ago. Jake, Zeth said one morning as they worked on improving the station's power systems, I want you to know that what you did for me was extraordinary. No Krillian has ever managed breeding time without help from their own species. We managed it together, Jake replied. I couldn't have done any of this without your cooperation, but you created the solution. You studied my people, understood our needs and found ways to satisfy them. You risked your own life to help me through the worst of it. Jake thought about this. I guess I never really thought about how unusual it was. I just saw a problem that needed solving. Zeth smiled. That is exactly what makes it remarkable. You saw my breeding time not as something to fear or endure, but as a challenge to understand and overcome. 3 days later, the station's communications array picked up incoming signals. Both human and Krillian rescue ships had arrived in the system and were requesting permission to dock. Jake felt mixed emotions as he watched the ships approach through the station's windows. He was excited to be rescued and to return to normal life, but he was also sad that his partnership with Zeth would end. Nervous? Zeth asked, joining him at the window. A little. Everything is going to change now. Not everything, Zeth said quietly. The rescue teams arrived together, a human medical crew and a Krillian scientific expedition. Both groups were amazed to find Jake and Zeth alive, healthy and working together so effectively. Dr. Lisa Grant, the lead human medic, examined Jake thoroughly. Your physical condition is excellent, she reported. But I have to ask, how did you survive alone with a Krillian in breeding time? Our xenobiology experts said it should have been impossible. It wasn't impossible, Jake said. It just required understanding and adaptation. Meanwhile, the Krillian scientists were examining Zeth with equal amazement. The expedition leader, an elderly Krillian named Commander Vex, spoke with Jake afterward. Young human, Vex said in careful English, Zeth tells us that you guided him through his breeding time using challenge-based therapy. This is unprecedented. I just observed what he needed and tried to provide it. You have documented this process? Jake nodded. I recorded everything. Daily observations, successful and unsuccessful techniques, biological changes, psychological patterns. I thought it might be useful for future research. Vex's eyes widened. May we review this documentation? Over the next several days, both human and Krillian scientists studied Jake's records with intense interest. What Jake had seen as simple problem-solving, they recognized as groundbreaking xenobiological research. Dr. Grant was particularly excited. Jake, do you realize what you've accomplished? You've created the first successful cross-species management protocol for Krillian breeding cycles. This could revolutionize how our species interact. More than that, Commander Vex added, you have proven that humans possess remarkable adaptability and empathy. Zeth's breeding time would have killed him without proper management. You saved his life using nothing but observation and creativity. Jake felt overwhelmed by their praise. I was just trying to survive. Exactly, Vex said. And in trying to survive, You demonstrated abilities that we did not know humans possessed. As the rescue teams prepared to leave, Jake faced a difficult decision. The human ship would take him back to Earth and his old life. The Krillian ship would take Zeth back to his homeworld. They would be separated, possibly forever. I have a proposal, Zeth said as they packed Jake's belongings. My people want to establish a permanent research station to study human-Krillian cooperation. They want you to lead the human side of the project. Jake looked up from his packing. Seriously? They are offering you a position as the first human-Krillian cooperation specialist. You would spend time on both our worlds, training others in the techniques you developed and researching new ways our species can work together. And you would be part of this project? Zeth smiled. I would be your primary partner and research subject. Who else understands what we accomplished here? Jake thought about returning to his old job on Earth, fixing routine mechanical problems and following orders from people who had never faced real challenges. Then he thought about the possibility of continuing to explore the amazing partnership he had built with Zeth. What about my government? Would they approve? Dr. Grant, who had been listening, stepped forward. Jake, both governments are extremely interested in this project. What you've accomplished here has major implications for future human-alien relations. They want you to continue this work. Jake looked at Zeth, who was watching him hopefully. You really want to keep working together? Jake, you saved my life and my sanity. More than that, you showed me that cooperation between our species is not just possible, but beneficial. I cannot imagine doing this work with anyone else. Jake made his decision. Yes, I want to continue our partnership. The celebration that followed surprised Jake with its intensity. Both the human and Krillian crews seemed genuinely excited about the possibilities this partnership represented. 6 months later, Jake stood in a laboratory on Krillia, Zeth's homeworld, watching a group of young Krillians practice the challenge-based techniques they had developed. Each Krillian was paired with a human partner who had trained under Jake's guidance. The third trial group is showing excellent results, Zeth reported, reviewing data on his computer. Breeding time stress levels are down 60% compared to traditional methods, and the human partners are adapting well to Krillian psychology. Better than we expected. It seems that humans have a natural ability to understand and respond to other species' needs. Jake looked around the laboratory, which was filled with humans and Krillians working together on various projects. What had started as a desperate survival situation had become a model for interspecies cooperation. Zeth, do you ever regret what happened on the station? The crisis, the danger, all of it? Zeth considered the question seriously. No. If we had been rescued earlier, we never would have discovered what we were capable of together. The crisis forced us to trust each other completely and find solutions that neither of our species had imagined. So you think it was worth it? Jake, look around you. Humans and Krillians working together, learning from each other, creating new knowledge that benefits both species. You have become the most respected human on our world, and I have learned more about cooperation and friendship than I thought possible. Yes, it was worth every difficult moment. Jake smiled as he watched a human engineer and a Krillian scientist celebrate solving a complex problem together. I guess sometimes the best partnerships are forged in the worst circumstances. Indeed, Zeth agreed. And sometimes survival teaches us more about living than comfort ever could. As they returned to their own research, Jake reflected on how much his life had changed. He had started as a simple engineer dealing with a medical emergency. Now he was pioneering a new field of science and building bridges between species. Most importantly, he had discovered that humans possessed something unique and valuable: the ability to adapt, understand and care for other species even under the most difficult circumstances. It was this quality that had saved Zeth's life and created their partnership, and it was this same quality that would help humanity build lasting friendships among the stars. The future was full of possibilities, and Jake was excited to explore them all with his unlikely partner by his side.